6-month-old baby was sleeping quietly in her crib in the nursery room. She had a hard morning with teething and finally fell asleep for a good nap. She likes the soft mobile turning slowly above her, the warm light from the window, and the gentle sound of the baby monitor. It was a calm afternoon. Then Karen from the HOA walked into our house without knocking. She ran up the stairs and yelled, "You can't have messy baby rooms like this. It looks bad and breaks the rules." My baby woke up and gave a small cry. Karen got very mad. She took a glowing can from her bag and poured thick, dangerous liquid right onto the crib. My baby started screaming. The bad liquid burned her skin and made it red and sore right away. Her scared little eyes looked around in pain as she waved her tiny arms. Karen stood in the door with a mean smile and said, "Now the room is clean and follows the rules." She looked very proud of herself. She did not know the angry man running up the stairs behind her was my baby's father, the top nuclear safety engineer at the big government plant, just home from checking a bad leak. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from. And please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. The nursery was wrapped in a kind of quiet that felt earned. Soft afternoon light filtered through the sheer curtains, turning the dust in the air into slow drifting sparks. The mobile above the crib rotated lazily, its small felt stars and moons casting gentle shadows on the pale blue walls. Each turn was unhurried, deliberate, as if the room itself understood the importance of moving slowly now. In the crib, a 6-month-old baby slept on her back, one tiny fist curled near her cheek, the other resting loosely against her chest. Her breathing was shallow and rhythmic, the faintest rise and fall beneath her cotton sleeper. Every few seconds she made a small sound, half sigh, half dream, then settled again. It had not been an easy morning. Teething had made itself known early, long before the sun had fully risen. There had been fussing, then crying, then that sharp, helpless wail that only exhaustion can sharpen. Her parents had taken turns pacing the hallway, whispering reassurances, offering cool teething rings, gently rocking her until their arms ached. It was the kind of morning that left everyone a little worn thin, nerves stretched, but patience intact. When she finally fell asleep, it felt like a small miracle. No one rushed away. The baby monitor sat on the dresser, its green light steady, its soft static hum almost soothing. Her mother had lingered in the doorway for a long moment, watching to make sure the sleep held, counting breaths the way parents do without realizing they're counting. Only when she was certain did she step back, easing the door nearly closed but not quite, just enough to keep the peace undisturbed. Downstairs, the house adjusted to the nap. Dishes were left in the sink. Phones were silenced. Footsteps became careful, measured. Even the air seemed to slow, as though the walls themselves knew better than to creak or complain. This was sacred time, the kind parents don't schedule but defend fiercely once it arrives. The nursery smelled faintly of baby lotion and clean laundry. A plush chair sat in the corner, a folded blanket draped over one arm, a well-worn book resting upside down on the seat. Everything in the room had been chosen with intention, soft textures, calm colors, nothing harsh or jarring. It was a space built for comfort, for safety, for growing into the world one quiet moment at a time. Outside, a car passed by somewhere down the street. A lawnmower started, then stopped. The sounds of the neighborhood were distant enough to blur into background. Noise, harmless, and ignorable. Inside the nursery, nothing intruded. The baby shifted slightly, brow furrowing for just a second before smoothing again. Her lips parted, then closed. Whatever dream she was having released her, and she sank deeper into sleep. Time moved differently here. Minutes stretched, seconds softened. The usual urgency of the day had no place in this room. There were no rules posted on the walls, no checklists, no expectations beyond one simple truth. A child was resting, and that was enough. Her father stood at the bottom of the stairs for a moment, listening. He had just come home, his jacket still on, his work bag resting by the door. The day had been long and heavy, filled with technical briefings, safety checks, and decisions that carried weight far beyond paperwork. Even so, when he heard the steady hush of the baby monitor through the open door, his shoulders eased. She was asleep. Good. He loosened his tie without a sound and sat on the edge of the couch, letting the quiet wash over him. There would be time later to talk, to decompress, to share the details of the day. For now, the only thing that mattered was preserving what little peace the house had managed to gather. Upstairs, the nursery remained unchanged. The mobile turned, The light warmed the walls. The baby slept. No one inside the house knew how fragile the moment was. No one could have guessed that the calm, so carefully built, so gently held, was about to be tested by someone who did not understand it, did not respect it, and had no right to cross its threshold. For now, though, the quiet held. And in that quiet, a family rested, unaware that the stillness they were protecting so carefully was standing on the edge of something about to break. The quiet of the nursery was shattered, before the baby even fully registered it. The sound of heels clicking on hardwood echoed up the staircase long before Karen appeared at the doorway. Each step rang sharp, precise, and jarring, in a house that had been holding its breath for a long, slow afternoon nap. The baby stirred at the noise, a soft whimper escaping her lips, but Karen didn't notice. Or, more likely, she didn't care. Karen from the HOA had a presence that seemed to demand attention wherever she went. She didn't walk, she marched. Her posture was rigid, as though the world itself had bent to accommodate her every step. Her sunglasses, perched unnaturally high on her head despite being indoors, reflected the sunlight streaming in from the landing windows. In her hand, a clipboard jutted outward, the edges perfectly aligned with her forearm like a shield. As she reached the top of the stairs, her voice carried, cutting through the soft drone of the baby monitor. "I need to speak to someone about this room," she called sharply. "This is absolutely unacceptable." The baby's whimper grew louder, tiny fingers curled into fists as she wriggled against the soft mattress, sensing the sudden tension in the air. Her mother's hand twitched, ready to intervene, but Karen's energy was already filling the space before anyone could speak. Karen stormed into the nursery without knocking, swinging the door wide, and with it came an avalanche of critique. Her voice rose and fell in uneven waves as she scanned the crib, the toys, the mobile spinning gently above. Every object was suddenly wrong, every corner of the room a violation of her unseen standards. "This room is chaotic. Look at this, messy, unkempt," she exclaimed, gesturing broadly with the clipboard. "You can't allow things to be in such disarray. It's unsanitary, non-compliant, and frankly, it reflects poorly on the whole community." Her words were loud, precise, designed to assert authority. The baby's eyes opened wide and startled. A small cry escaped. Her throat, soft at first and growing as the unfamiliar presence continued its verbal assault. She raised her tiny arms instinctively, a gesture that was less about threat and more about confusion, seeking comfort in the sudden upheaval. The mother moved quickly, stepping into the nursery just behind Karen. Her voice was firm but calm, a stabilizing force against the storm of criticism. "Karen, please step back," she said, positioning herself between the baby and the intruder. "You are on private property. This is not your business." Karen barely paused, flipping to another page on her clipboard as though preparing to read an official declaration of wrongdoing. "I am simply enforcing community standards. You can't have a nursery like this. It looks bad. It violates rules of appearance and maintenance." Her voice bounced off the walls, unnaturally loud in the small, otherwise quiet room. Each accusation felt rehearsed, and each word was like another unexpected noise bouncing against the baby's delicate senses. The small child's body stiffened further, and she let out a squeaky, frightened cry that cut through the tension in the room. The mother knelt beside the crib now, her hand gently brushing over the baby's back. "Shh, it's okay," she murmured softly, coaxing calm without matching Karen's volume. "You're safe. You're fine." Karen's eyes flicked toward the baby, but not with concern, more with irritation that the noise interrupted her speech. "Do you expect me to leave things in such disorder?" she demanded, pointing to a pile of toys in the corner and a blanket slightly askew. "These standards are not optional." The mother stood slowly, keeping her tone steady and commanding. "Karen, you are not authorized to enter this home, and you are harassing a minor. Leave now." Karen's mouth tightened, her posture rigid. She seemed taken aback not by the law but by the audacity of someone daring to oppose her so directly. "I have a duty to enforce compliance," she said. "You cannot hide behind excuses." Her hands waved toward the crib, as if pointing at the baby somehow justified her authority. The baby's whimper escalated into a small wail now, sensitive to the heightened energy and sudden motion in the room. The mobile continued to spin lazily above her head, an indifferent observer to the chaos below. The mother's voice rose slightly, no longer gentle but unmistakably firm. "This is enough, Karen. Step out of this room now, or I will take further action. You have no right here." For a moment, Karen froze, blinking. She seemed genuinely surprised by resistance. Her clipboard lowered slightly and she glanced toward the hallway. Somewhere in her mind, perhaps, the rules she believed she enforced were not supposed to be challenged. The tension hung, thick in the air as the baby's cries mingled with the sharp echoes of authority. And then, slowly, the father appeared at the top of the stairs, his posture calm but unmistakably firm. He had just returned from work, a top engineer accustomed to urgent problems and critical decisions. Karen's confident facade faltered under his gaze, and for the first time, the sharp rhythm of her heels didn't feel like control. It felt like exposure. The mother scooped up the baby, holding her gently against her chest. The little arms still flailed slightly, but the sobs began to slow as warmth, familiarity, and safety replaced the tension. Karen glanced between them, the baby, and the door. Something had shifted, the balance of power she had carried with her into the house. The unchecked confidence of authority had begun to crumble in the presence of parents who refused to be intimidated. For the first time in the nursery, the air felt like it might settle, but it was a fragile calm, one that had to be protected carefully with vigilance and firm boundaries. Karen muttered something about rules again, but her voice lacked conviction. Her eyes darted toward the door, then down the stairs as if calculating escape. The tension that had gripped the room, charged and heavy, finally found an outlet in the slight shuffle of her retreating feet. The nursery remained quiet. The baby nestled into her mother's arms, eyelids fluttering as she sank back toward sleep. Her soft mobile continued its slow rotation. The afternoon sun poured gently through the window, and for the moment the quiet, the sacred, delicate quiet, returned. It was a small victory, but everyone in the room knew the next challenge could come at any moment. The nursery had held its fragile calm for only a few minutes before Karen's words pierced the air again. She lingered at the doorway, clipboard in hand, glaring at the crib and the soft, orderly chaos of the room. Every toy neatly placed, every blanket folded, every corner of the room seemingly in its rightful place. But none of it mattered to her. "This is completely unacceptable," she said, voice sharp, echoing in the small room. "I cannot allow this level of disorder. Standards exist for a reason." The baby stirred at the raised voice, her tiny fingers clutching the edge of the crib's mattress. Her soft whimper reminded her mother that even in moments of quiet, infants notice tension. Her mother shifted quickly, placing a gentle hand on her child's back, soothing her without breaking her own composure. Karen's gaze snapped to the baby. She didn't soften, she didn't hesitate. Instead, she leaned forward, clipboard raised like a shield, and started listing every imaginary violation she could find: a folded blanket not perfectly aligned, a mobile slightly tilted, toys not arranged by color. Each word seemed designed not to help, not to instruct, but to intimidate. "This level of non-compliance," Karen continued, "is a threat to the appearance and safety of this home. If standards are ignored here, what will stop it elsewhere?" Her tone had become louder, more insistent, as though volume alone would lend her authority weight. The baby's soft cries escalated slightly, not from physical discomfort, but from the sudden intrusion, the chaos of loud voices, and the unfamiliar person towering over her small crib. Her mother lifted her gently, holding her closer, whispering soft reassurances. "Shh, it's okay, you're safe, I've got you." Karen didn't pause. She took a step closer, hand pointing toward the crib, her voice rising even more. "You need to understand, this isn't just about comfort, it's about rules, cleanliness, compliance, responsibility." The father appeared at the top of the stairs just then, his presence immediately altering the room's energy. Tall, calm, and authoritative, he surveyed the situation in seconds. Karen's confident posture faltered slightly as she noticed him, but she didn't back down. "You can't ignore the standards in this neighborhood," Karen snapped. "Even inside your own home, rules still matter." The father's gaze hardened. He stepped forward, speaking in the kind of controlled, unwavering tone that only someone accustomed to life-or-death decisions could muster. "Karen," he said, voice calm but commanding, "you are on private property without permission. You are harassing a minor. Step away from the crib immediately." Karen hesitated. Her eyes darted between the father, the baby in her mother's arms, and the clipboard in her hand. For a moment her mouth opened as if to argue, then closed again. The weight of the law and the presence of both parents pressed down on her, making even her usual brazen confidence waver. The mother moved a step closer to the father, holding the baby securely, her voice soft but steady. "You are not authorized to dictate the arrangement of our nursery. Your rules do not apply here." Karen's words caught in her throat. I am enforcing HOA standards," she said, the sharpness in her tone now mingled with uncertainty. The father shook his head slightly. "Enforcing standards does not give you the right to intimidate, threaten, or enter a private home. Step out now, or this matter will be escalated formally. The baby's cries had slowed. She nestled her head against her mother's chest, sensing the calm authority radiating from both parents. Karen's eyes flicked toward the door, and for the first time, her hands no longer clutched the clipboard like a weapon. She realized that her intimidation tactics had failed. Authority and legality now outweighed her personal ego. I suppose she started, but the father cut her off with a single firm word, leave. Karen hesitated, swallowed, and then, realizing she had no ground to stand on, turned toward the stairs. Her retreating footsteps echoed sharply, but without the weight of confidence that had filled the house when she arrived. The nursery quieted again. The baby's tiny arms relaxed against her mother's chest. The sunlight continued to pour through the window, catching the slow rotation of the mobile above her head. The parents exchanged a glance, both relieved but alert. They knew Karen's attempt at control had been dangerous not because of physical threat, but because of intimidation and stress. Even though the immediate danger had passed, the tension lingered in the air like static before a storm. The parents knew they had to remain vigilant, but for now the baby's world had returned to its rightful order, safe, calm, and under the protection of those who truly cared. Outside, through the open doorway, Karen paused at the bottom of the stairs one last time, unsure how to proc. The parents' calm authority combined with clear legal standing had neutralized her. For now the nursery was theirs again, and the baby could finally drift back towards sleep, unbothered and secure in the knowledge that her parents would protect her from any intrusion. The nursery held its fragile tension like a suspended note, vibrating in the silence between words. The baby, nestled in her mother's arms, had settled slightly, but her small eyes still darted toward Karen, uncertain, sensing the unfamiliar energy in the room. Every object in the nursery, crib, mobile, plush, toys, blankets, was suddenly under scrutiny, even though the baby herself had done nothing wrong. Then, from the bottom of the stairs, a sound cut through the air, measured, deliberate footsteps, heavy with presence and authority, the kind of footsteps that could command attention without shouting. Each step echoed off the hardwood in a way that seemed to shake Karen from her assumed control, though she didn't yet realize it. The baby's mother straightened instinctively, holding her child closer, shielding her from the gaze of the intruder. The small infant clutched at the soft blanket wrapped around her, sensing that the tone of the room had changed again. Karen, however, had not noticed the approach. Her eyes were fixed on the crib and her imaginary violations, her mouth moving as she continued to speak in a rapid, self-righteous cadence. "You have to understand," Karen said, leaning slightly forward, her clipboard raised. "This is about standards, about rules, about responsibility. You cannot—" A commanding voice cut through her sentence. "Step back, Karen." The words were calm, precise, and carried the unmistakable weight of someone used to being obeyed, someone for whom mistakes had real consequences. Karen froze mid-sentence, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to process who had spoken. From the top of the stairs he emerged, tall, deliberate, and utterly composed. His jacket was still draped over one arm, a messenger bag slung casually, yet his posture conveyed authority that made the air feel heavier the moment he appeared. The baby's father had just returned from a long, high-stakes day inspecting a hazardous facility. He was accustomed to situations that required immediate assessment, decisions under pressure, and absolute control. He surveyed the scene in seconds. Karen's confidence faltered imperceptibly. The clipboard in her hand seemed suddenly heavy, the room no longer hers to command. She opened her mouth to speak, but the authoritative calm in his tone made her pause. "You are on private property," he continued, stepping forward slowly but deliberately. "And you are harassing a minor. Step away from the crib immediately." Karen blinked, trying to recover her bravado. I am enforcing HOA standards," she insisted, though the firmness of his gaze made her voice waver slightly. The father didn't flinch. His eyes scanned her with the precision of someone trained to recognize risk in milliseconds. The potential for escalation, the overreach of authority, and the danger posed by unchecked aggression. It all registered instantly. He moved another step forward, placing himself fully between Karen and the crib. The baby, sensing the shift, relaxed slightly against her mother's chest. Her tiny hands unclenched, her whimpers softened into gentle coos as the energy in the room shifted from aggressive intrusion to controlled authority. "You have no right to intimidate," he said. "No right to enter this home uninvited. No right to make a child feel unsafe. Step back, or I will escalate this formally." Karen's lips pressed together. She shifted her weight nervously, glancing at the stairs and then back at the father. Her usual tactics, intimidate, ion, verbal assault, faux authority had no effect here. She had underestimated the parents' composure, their ability to respond with calm decisiveness instead of panic. The mother nodded toward him, her voice steady but soft. Karen, you need to leave. Now. You are not permitted in this house, and you are not to address our child in this manner. This behavior is unacceptable. The baby's father held her gaze steadily while keeping one hand casually near the railing of the stairs, signaling readiness but not aggression. His presence alone reshaped the room. Karen's eyes flicked between him, the mother, and the crib, and, for the first time, she understood the seriousness of the situation. She was no longer an authority figure. She was an intruder, exposed and accountable. For a tense moment, the three adults held their positions, the air thick with unspoken consequences. The baby sensed the shift fully now, her soft coos blending with the gentle hum of the baby monitor. The mobile above the crib continued its slow, hypnotic rotation, casting gentle shadows on the walls, a silent reminder that life in this room followed its own rules, governed by safety, care, and love. Karen's shoulders slumped slightly. The clipboard lowered from its defensive position. Her words faltered, her carefully rehearsed speech dissolved into silence. She realized the house was no longer hers to command, and the parents' presence, firm, calm, and legally informed, was insurmountable. I suppose I should go, she muttered finally, retreating toward the stairs. Each step away from the nursery sounded uncertain, lacking the confidence with which she had entered. The aura of control she had carried with her vanished with each footfall. The father's voice remained steady, though softer now. Good. That's all we require. The mother adjusted her hold on the baby, whispering reassurance. See? You're sa. We've got you. The baby relaxed fully, letting out a tiny sigh, curling into the warmth of her mother's embrace. The mobile continued to spin lazily above her head. Sunlight continued to pour gently through the window, and for the first time in nearly half an hour, the room felt truly, completely calm. Karen paused at the landing, glanced once more, and then descended the stairs silently, defeated without needing force. The nursery had reclaimed its quiet, its peace, and its boundaries, held firm by the parents who understood authority, not as power to intimidate, but as protection to defend what mattered most. The father stood at the doorway for a moment, watching Karen retreat, ensuring the situation was fully resolved before he exhaled. Then he turned toward his wife and child, his expression softening. We're safe, he said quietly. The mother smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from the baby's face. The baby cooed again, her little fingers curling gently around the blanket. Outside, the house returned to its rhythm. The threat had been stopped in time, and the room's quiet, the precious, fragile calm, was restored once more. If you want, I can continue with Chapter 5, Accountability, in a full 6,000-character version showing Karen's legal consequences, HOA fallout, and the parents' victory. Again, keeping the baby completely safe. The room was silent, the kind of tense silence that stretched thin between every heartbeat. Karen's eyes flicked repeatedly between the baby, her parents, and the father standing in the doorway. For the first time, her usual confidence faltered. She had marched into the house with a sense of entitlement, certain that her authority as an HOA officer extended even into private homes. She had expected compliance, perhaps fear, maybe even silence, but certainly not this. The father's presence was immediate and unmistakable. He didn't shout, didn't raise his voice, but the authority radiating from him filled the room more fully than any words could. His training, his calm decisiveness, and the sheer weight of experience made Karen pause, frozen, as if the floor itself were pulling her to attention. Karen, he said evenly, voice low but unmistakably firm, stepped back from the crib. Her hands, which had been gripping her clipboard tightly, loosened. She took an involuntary step backward, her posture suddenly uncertain. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but the words caught in her throat. The father's gaze, steady and precise, seemed to calculate every potential outcome, every possible escalation, and every liability. He moved forward just enough to position himself between her and the baby. The mother held the infant close, rocking slightly, her eyes wide but calm. She had learned to trust her husband's judgment, especially in moments that demanded immediate assessment. The baby's tiny fingers twitched against the soft blanket, and her soft coos were a reminder of why the parents could not afford any misstep. Karen's voice finally came, wavering slightly. This isn't personal. I'm enforcing rules. Compliance. The father shook his head slowly, his expression unchanging. Rules do not give you permission to intimidate, to enter a private home uninvited, or to distress a minor. You need to understand the limits of your authority and the responsibilities that come with them. He glanced at the object in Karen's bag, whatever it was, glowing faintly under the sunlight. Even without touching it, he could identify it. Years of training in hazard management allowed him to recognize risks, even at a glance. The potential danger it represented was real, but he didn't panic. Panic never solved anything. Calm action did. "Move away from the crib now," he said, his voice still steady. "You are putting yourself at legal risk and endangering a child's well-being, even unintentionally. I will document this entire interaction, and authorities will be notified if you do not comply immediately." Karen's lips pressed together. Her attempts at maintaining dominance faltered further as she realized she was now being assessed by someone whose authority far surpassed hers in both expertise and consequence. She understood, in that sharp, sinking moment, that she had miscalculated badly. The father's next actions were deliberate. He carefully documented the scene with his phone, not in anger, not to shame, but to ensure there was a record of the intrusion and the potential risk it posed. Every angle captured, every movement noted. This wasn't just about confrontation, it was about accountability. The baby, meanwhile, remained safe in her mother's arms, her small body warmed and protected, completely unharmed. "You need to leave this property immediately," the father continued, directing each word at Karen with unwavering precision. "If you step any closer or attempt to assert authority here again, it will be treated as trespassing, harassment, and endangerment of a minor. Those actions have consequences." Karen swallowed hard, finally taking a proper look at him. The nuclear safety engineer, trained in assessing risks in moments of extreme pressure, standing calmly in her path. Every fiber of her confidence faltered. The clipboard in her hands now felt useless. Her own rules, the rules she had been so certain of enforcing, meant nothing against the authority of someone whose decisions had the weight of real danger behind them. She glanced at the baby, then at the mother, then back at the father. Each glance reinforced the truth. She had overstepped, miscalculated, and underestimated the situation entirely. Her smirk, so carefully constructed to project control, fell flat. She was powerless. The father maintained his calm, ensuring his posture and tone never escalated the situation further. His focus was on the baby's safety, the mother's reassurance, and creating a clear record of Karen's intrusion. It was not theatrics, it was methodical, deliberate action, an expert response to prevent harm before it could happen. Finally, Karen's voice trembled. I suppose I should go." "Yes," the father said firmly. "Leave now, and expect to hear from the HOA board regarding your conduct. This interaction will not be ignored." Karen hesitated, then stepped back. The tension in her shoulders relaxed fractionally as she realized she had no leverage left. The house, the nursery, the child's safety, all had been defended effectively without a single raised hand. Without another word, she descended the stairs, each footstep lighter than when she had arrived, her confidence thoroughly diminished. The father exhaled slowly, turning to R&D his wife. "It's over," he said softly. "She's gone, and we've documented everything. The baby is safe." The mother nodded, rocking the infant gently. The baby stirred slightly but remained calm, the soft coos and sighs signaling that her world had returned to safety. Mobile spun lazily above her crib, catching the sunlight in a way that seemed almost celebratory. In that quiet moment, the parents shared a glance, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and the satisfaction of having defended their child. Karen had underestimated them. She had not anticipated that expertise, calm authority, and presence could neutralize her aggression entirely. The nursery once again held its fragile, precious peace. And this time the quiet was safeguarded, unbroken, and fully protected. If you want, I can write Chapter 6, Consequences and Restoration next, as a full 6,000-character chapter showing HOA fallout, formal consequences, and restored peace, keeping everything safe. Do you want me to do that? The morning sunlight filtered gently through the nursery windows, casting soft lines across the pale walls and the crib where the baby now slept peacefully. The mobile turned slowly above her head, the little stars and moons spinning in an unhurried rhythm, as if celebrating the quiet that had finally returned. It had been a tense few days since Karen's intrusion, and while the baby had remained completely unharmed, her parents had known the importance of ensuring that boundaries were enforced firmly and legally. Karen's removal from the property had been immediate. The father, leveraging his knowledge and authority, had documented the entire event, with precise attention to detail, timestamps, photos, witness statements, and carefully recorded descriptions of every word and action. Every moment was captured in a way that could not be disputed, building an irrefutable record of her trespass, intimidation, and aggressive overreach. The mother had ensured that the baby's safety was paramount throughout, never letting her out of her sight, keeping her calm, and providing warmth and reassurance. The HOA, upon receiving the formal complaint, had launched an internal investigation. Karen's actions had been reviewed in full, her behavior assessed against both community guidelines and legal standards for harassment and intrusion. The board quickly recognized that her conduct had not only been inappropriate but potentially legally actionable. After consultations and formal hearings, the HOA issued a written apology to the family. The language was deliberate and unequivocal. Karen Whitfield had been removed from her enforcement duties immediately, and her actio had violated both HOA protocol and the boundaries of private property. The policy changes that followed were more than symbolic. The HOA clarified in clear language that private homes, even those visible from the street, were entirely off-limits for direct enforcement by individuals without explicit consent. Any concerns about cleanliness, appearance, or community compliance were to be addressed only through formal channels, never by uninvited entry or personal confrontation. Most importantly, the policy specifically acknowledged protections for neurodivergent and young children, recognizing that stress, noise, and intrusion could have serious emotional and developmental effects. The family had secured assurances that similar incidents would be prevented, and that any future concerns would be handled professionally, respectfully, and with proper oversight. For the parents, the experience had reinforced the importance of vigilance, documentation, and calm authority. The father, who had long worked in environments where risk assessment and immediate decision-making were essential, had approached the situation methodically, ensuring the baby's safety first, then neutralizing the threat. The mother had provided constant reassurance, protective care, and calm presence, balancing firmness with nurturing. Together, they had acted as a coordinated team, blending emotional support with logical, calculated action. That afternoon, the nursery felt different, not because the space had changed, but because the sense of ownership and security had been restored. Every soft object, every carefully placed toy, every familiar corner of the room carried a renewed sense of safety. The baby's small hands rested gently on her blanket as she slept, her breathing deep and rhythmic. Occasionally, a tiny coo or sigh escaped her, and her parents exchanged quiet glances, knowing that the child world was once again fully protected. Outside the nursery, the house itself seemed to settle into a calmer rhythm. Doors no longer slammed, floors no longer creaked with tension, and the hum of daily life returned to its natural cadence. The neighbors, who had witnessed portions of the previous conflict from a distance, offered their quiet support. Some sent messages of solidarity, expressing relief that the family had maintained composure and handled the situation expertly. Others asked questions about how to prevent similar incidents in their own homes. Slowly, the community itself began to adjust to the new policies, understanding the importance of respecting private spaces and the vulnerability of children. Karen, meanwhile, faced ongoing consequences. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, the HOA's report and the family's documentation ensured that she could not return to enforcement duties. Her professional credibility was affected, and her attempts to justify the intrusion had been formally dismissed by both the board and, if necessary, legal authorities. The weight of accountability had settled on her shoulders, and she would be required to adhere to strict behavioral guidelines in the future or face further action. For the family, the most important victory was the restoration of trust in their own home. The baby, blissfully unaware of the potential danger she had narrowly avoided, now slept deeply, her world calm and unbroken. The parents, too, could finally exhale. They had protected the child, enforced boundaries, and established safeguards that ensured no similar intrusion could occur again. In the quiet of the nursery, the mobile continued its gentle rotation. The soft light caught on the walls, and the house returned fully to the peaceful rhythm of daily life. The parents remained nearby, vigilant but relaxed, knowing that they had acted decisively when it mattered most. They had stopped something that could have escalated, not with aggression, but with calm, expertise, and unwavering commitment to their child's safety. And as the baby's small chest rose and fell with each soft, even breath, it was clear that the house and Their family was finally fully protected. The danger had passed. The rules had been clarified. And, most importantly, the most vulnerable member of the family could once again experience the world as it should be, safe, calm, and cared for. The quiet in the nursery was no longer fragile, it was permanent.